Around the turn of the century, in the year 1903, two men by the names of Orville and Wilbur Wright designed and built the first practical aircraft and forever changed the face of warfare and transportation. They explored a new realm of technology that people had only dreamt of and made it a reality. They encountered design flaws, patent issues, and public doubt along the way, but surpassed all of these obstacles. Today, their original ideas, which have been refined and improved upon throughout the years, continue to impact people, with air travel being an incredibly important form of transportation and aircraft being a prominent part of the U.S. military as well as in other militaries around the world. In a time when, after many an attempt and failure, the idea of human flight had almost been deemed impossible, it would have been reasonable for the public to view the Wright brothers as two crazy men whose ambitions of flying made no sense. The public had seen Otto Lilienthal, a famous pioneer in aviation for his extensive work with gliders, die during an attempt at human flight. He was conducting one of thousands of glides he had made when his glider crashed, breaking his neck and eventually killing him in August of 1896. The Wright brothers were just young men at this time, but they credit their inspiration for wanting to achieve flight on Otto Lilienthal's tragic death. He had come closer than anyone else in history to figuring out a practical way for man to fly, yet he had only come close, but in the end did not accomplish all that he may have been able to. Other minor experimenters had tinkered with machines that they hoped would allow man to fly, but no one had yet cracked the code. Wilbur and Orville soon decided that they would be the ones to finally do it. Achieving this was no minor undertaking. There were constant barriers that posed themselves during the Wright brothers' process of designing such an aircraft. Though they did have the advantage of being able to see people's past mistakes and successes, they were still faced with the same challenges that everyone before them was. Using the profits they had made running bicycle and print shops in earlier years, they funded the construction of their first gliders. They made the first test flights in their hometown of Dayton, Ohio. Dayton turned out not to be an ideal place to fly a glider, so the brothers decided to move their camp to Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, where the majority of their flights would later be made. Here they conducted hundreds of test runs and made countless design changes to the wings and chassis of their gliders. To make this process easier, they built a wind tunnel, which they could use to test individual wing designs alone instead of building a whole new glider each time. They solved the technical barrier with their own resourcefulness. However, this was not the only thing getting between the Wright brothers and success. The Wright brothers had an overwhelming lack of support from the public. Because of the time period, two men trying to fly was viewed as foolish and a waste of time. When the brothers believed they were onto something, they approached newspapers and reporters claiming that they were developing a way for humans to fly, but were not given a second thought because the idea was dismissed as impossible. This in turn caused the brothers not to gain any traction or recognition, which meant that the brothers were forced to work with only their own funding, insight, time, and each other's help and brainpower. So how did they do it? The Wright brothers grew up in a family where it was always encouraged to pursue what interested you and to have an open mind. Their father left a lasting influence on his children, with his idea that they should be confident in themselves and never give up. Wilbur and Orville took this very seriously. They were self-reliant and extremely tenacious. After hundreds of test flights and manned glides and design changes and 3 years of hard work, the day finally came. On December 17, 1903, 4 miles from their camp in Kitty Hawk, the Wright brothers made the first successful, controlled, and powered human flight in history. Following this, the brothers began getting the media and public attention they deserved. The public was shocked by all of this, as they had all along thought that human-controlled flight was an utter impossibility. But the brothers were not done yet. They continued to improve their aircraft and received award after reward for their mind-blowing feats. They were considered national heroes and were praised immensely for what they had accomplished. But people did not just see the greatness in all of this. Others saw the massive number of potential uses for all the new flight technology. The military saw the potential use of aircraft in warfare. The Wright brothers began selling their technology to the military and training pilots. This exchange of knowledge of how to build and fly aircraft between the Wright brothers and the militaries of several countries is one of the most influential and significant turning points war has ever seen. The biplane was a revolutionary factor in World War I because those who had airplane technology could get places faster, react to crises quicker, and have the added element of air attack rather than ground only. Aircraft also helped in wars because care packages and other forms of aid could be dropped to troops in the field when they were in need. The biplane definitely changed the outcome of the war. By World War II, military aircraft had come a long way, and people had developed very maneuverable and fast aircraft. The effectiveness of aircraft in warfare had been witnessed by many nations of the world, and they all sought to utilize them for their obvious advantages. The other area which was made possible due to the Wright brothers' inventions was air transportation. The potential for passenger airplanes was seen very early on by a man named Tony Janus. He made the first commercial flight by going from St. Petersburg to Tampa in 1914. After World War II, commercial aircraft became much more common, and the U.S. had developed factories for constructing them. Airports were created to make commercial flying more readily available. The airplane made travel so much more efficient and fast, it revolutionized the very idea of travel. It allowed people to explore other places without having to voyage by boat. As for the military, after more than a century of refining and improving the aircraft, the biplane has evolved into jet-powered fighter planes, capable of 1,500-mile-per-hour speeds, and continues to have an enormous impact on the battlefield. People today take much for granted their ability to soar through the sky from one country to another. It was the Wright brothers' inventions that sparked the inspiration for commercial aviation. More than a century later, in 2013, the worldwide passenger total was 3.1 billion, nearly half of the world's population, all because two brilliant men pursued what intrigued them and had open minds.